Good morning and welcome to Gary's Graveyard Ramblings. And as you can see, we are back in my old stamping ground and we've come back to the arsehole end of the church in the village today. And look, you see, over there is the privileged bit. And I'm going to go a little bit closer this time so that you can see what privilege buys you in rural Sussex. You see, you get your own portico, your own gate, and your own forgotten grave. Don't know whose that is, but it doesn't look very edifying, does it? And over there, around the corner, is Count Dracula, it's light now, so I think I'm safe. Look, he's under there. See? But I'm safe. And I'm going to reposition myself behind my propping gravestone, which is this one. And say hello to John Gilbert of this parish, who has been supported by, who's been supporting me meanwhilest. Now, I wasn't going to do a Gary's Graveyard Ramblings today, and the reason for that is that, well, I've been a bit dry, if the truth be told, and my mojo slipped. A good breakfast at the Delaware Pavilion in Bexhill will sort that one out, thank you. And so that's where I'm going after this. So what am I going to ramble on about today? Well, ramble is... Oh, look, I've just noticed on that gravestone over there is what looks like a Chad. You know those things that... look, those things, those little men that poke over the top with their hands saying, what, no, something or other. But in fact, it actually, on second viewing, looks like it might be an owl. Isn't that fascinating? I'll just reposition myself. I'm not editing just yet, even though my lovely friend Keith Flippin has given me wonderful tips in how to edit and change the view that you see, like this. So you see, seamless joints. Now that's broken a cardinal rule of mine, which Keith knows about, and that is that I tend to do these things in one take for two reasons. Firstly, because I didn't possess the technical brilliance of Keith Flippin to edit these things. And secondly, because I frequently lose my train of thread. If I don't get it all out in one go, I'm sorry, my dear, but it is not going to happen. So let's just hope I manage to keep it together for the rest of this and all for this rubbish. See, I tripped up even then. So what was I going to talk about? People have asked me, why did you finish your autobiography, your story in I can't remember what it was called now. Now that, you see, should be an edit, because I tripped over myself horribly, but I'm not going to. In my autobiography, why did you finish it in 1985? Well, it's a good question, I suppose, if you're into questions. Well, to be honest, I finished it then because the stories that I would have been obliged to have told would have been, frankly, unacceptable to the world of today, which we live in. As you know, we're living in a matrix. We're living in a matrix because strange things happen, even after an edit. And, you know, you can be walking up a thin, narrow lane and all of a sudden a lorry meets you at the exact shortest point and you think to yourself, what the hell is going on? And incidentally, hell is a word I know that you can't say in America. Did you know that? When you fill out your form for I want to go to America on holiday, they say, have you ever said the word hell? And if you put yes, they reject it. Anyway, I've never said it, so I'm not worried about that. Holidays, here I come. So where was I, for Christ's sake? Oh, you can't say Christ either. So you're in the Matrix and strange things have happened. And I decided, well, after 1985, my stories get very, very risky to tell. And one of them, and actually most of them, involve my experiences on the railways, which were not of my doing. It's just that after my company that I was with lost its Arts Council grant in 1979. Have I explained that already? If I have, you know what's to blame. So I decided to get a job because I needed to eat, basically. Actors do, you know. Have you ever eaten with an actor? Don't. So I got a job on the railways, and I remember phoning up my mother, and I said to her, "Mum, I'm joining the railways to earn some money." And she went quiet for a little bit, and then she said to me, "Darling, do you think that's wise? Because they are a little bit rough. But actually, a lot of them, salt of the earth." In my autobiography, I didn't tell many railway stories. I told 3 because I couldn't really ignore them. That would have been disingenuous. I tell you what, if we are in the Matrix, will somebody shoot that bloody plane down? What keeps flying above me? Or helicopter, whatever it is. Where was I? Oh yes, my mum, bless her. She said, "Don't do it." And the railways were an experience I will never forget. I've been trying for many years. One of the stories that I would so much like, there were so many stories I would love to have told in that book, but they all were simply too risky for today's audiences, who, you know, you have to issue trigger warnings like this. You have to issue actual warnings or threats like this. You have to ring the church bell like this. And I frankly decided that it just wasn't worth the bother. Well, I'm going to break that, and I'm going to risk telling you one of the stories which I love to recall at dinner parties. If you ever invite me to dinner, I'm an actor, so not many people invite me to dinner. Have you seen? Oh, I've done that gag. I'm going to tell this story, but I need to warn. I'm going to bleep it. I'm going to self-bleep, because some parts of it are not palatable for today's audiences. I used to, when I joined the railway, I was sent as a guard on the Metropolitan line of the Underground in London to a health resort called Neasden. Now, for foreign and American viewers, Neasden is a health resort of fine repute in northwest London. It's a beautiful place. It's the sort of place that people aspire to want to live in. It's leafy, it's green, it's gorgeous, and property values are off the scale, quite frankly. Back then, though, it was a shithole. And we were working out of this place called Neasden, where there was a huge depot. See, I know the lingo. And we used to have our meal breaks, or as we called them in the upper class parlance of the railways, grub, at a place called Wembley Park, another health resort of fine repute. And in this building, which was on the end of the platform, there was a canteen, a staff canteen, and it was split into 2 bits. The front bit, you walked in off the end of the platform and down through this doorway, had melamine tables, blue tiles, you know, the sort of thing you'd find at the at top class hotels. And crews used to go in there 24/7 to make their tea and relax in what was known as a mess room, for obvious reasons. And it was separated from the canteen section of this establishment, which was behind it through a doorway. And at night, they used to close it off and lock off the canteen to stop pilfering train crews from getting at the grub for nothing. And behind the counter in this canteen, there was a fearsome German lady, quite big. She actually did look like the German lady out of the Mel Brooks film Young Frankenstein. I can't remember what her real name was. Isn't that awful? And we called her Helga. And it was not a good idea to upset Helga. In fact, most of the people in there were absolutely terrified of her because she had a fearsome temper. And I quite liked her, though. In fact, I got on with her really well. I thought she was Campbell. We used to laugh together. I thought she was lovely, but I didn't let the others know that. Best not to. And so that set the scene for this particular tale. At Neasden, there was a driver on the Jubilee line called Bob. Bob. And Bob was deeply unpleasant. I can't really put it in any other way. This is a bit of a cruel story, so you're going to have to run with me, I think, for this. He had a speech impediment. He was short, he was fat, he was hairy, he was smelly, he was deeply unpleasant, and he was one of those people that if you'd done it, he'd done it 10 times better than you, and he didn't, let's be honest, he didn't help himself, I think is what we would probably want to say. Any roader, this speech impediment that he had, and I want to stress, I am not taking the merciful pee out of people with speech impediments, because that wouldn't be fair. That is not what Peasmoldia is all about. Got it? Good. Anyway, Bob was vile. And many of my colleagues there could impersonate Bob with uncanny accuracy. And they would quite frequently say, oh, sorry, Bob, did you say something? I thought someone was dragging a dustbin in, or things like that. You know, it was very cruel. Anyway, one day, Bob had gone up to Helga in the canteen at Wembley Park and had ordered his breakfast. And in his usual swaggering, deeply unpleasant way, he'd said to her, "Hello, darling," he says, "I'll have a full English." He said, "And I've just got to go and see the station manager." He said, "I'll be back in a minute." And then he turned around and walked off and swaggered off out the door. We were all sitting in the front bit, round the corner, you see, out of the way. So we were laughing and joking, like blokes do, because it was very blokey there. I'm very proud, you know, they didn't rumble. Anyway, one of the other guys in there, whose name I've forgotten, because it was so long ago, this is over 40 years ago, we're talking about 1982, he could impersonate Bob with uncanny accuracy. And he said, "Here, listen to this." And at the top of his voice, he shouted out, "Oi, where's my breakfast, you And with timing that could not have been manufactured, even in the Matrix, in walked Bob at the end door, walked up to Helga, said, "Hello, darling," and she picked his breakfast up and threw it over him. And he froze and said, "What did you do that for?" And as we all turned round to look, a fried egg slipped off of his face, tripped down and plopped onto the floor. And the laughter. So you see, it is very cruel. I have to tell you, I did an earlier version of this where I didn't self-bleep it, but I was so overcome with fear that people would report me and say all sorts of terrible things about what I was broadcasting that I decided to redo it. So you see, that is why. Two things. Firstly, why the Matrix exists. And secondly, why I finished my book in 1985, because if you think that story was strong, that's nothing compared to some of the other things that I could tell. People always say, don't they? They say, you should write a book about what you know. Well, I wrote my autobiography because I thought I knew myself. But then I had to finish it in 1985, and that's why. Now, I think I've rambled on far too long, and I'm sure I can hear you agreeing, so I shall just leave you all respectfully and say, Saluté.